welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to make this dress I'm wearing, which is made out of a sheer fabric, has a drop waistline and a gathered skirt, as you can see. The back of this dress has buttons down and is sheer as well. Now this dress is very simple to make and very straightforward as well. As a result of that, I'll be incorporating the pattern making and sewing process together in this video. There's one thing I need to let you know before starting this process. You need to have patience. It is very important. So I made this out of tulle, as you can see. This tulle has a very lovely details. So hopefully when I take a picture, you'll be able to see the detailing on this picture. It's just some stripes actually, nothing too major. But I think it just takes it, to another level. Now, sewing with tulle is a very delicate process. So what you do not want to do is to sew anything and then have to pluck out your stitches. You will end up distorting it. You might not even find the stitch to even remove in the first place. So you need to be very patient with this. So full disclosure, I started off making the dress, completed the bodice aspect of the dress, decided to press it down a little bit just before I add the skirt bit, and yes, I burnt it. So I had to start all over again. Trust me, you do not want to go through the same process. So just take your time while you're sewing it. As long as you have your bodice pattern, which I'll be leaving a link for below so you can get that, and it fits you perfectly, you will not have any problem whatsoever. Now the thing I really like about this dress is just the fact that it's so versatile. So I can decide to wear basically anything I want to wear inside. Right now I'm wearing the spaghetti strap dress with 4 style lines, which I made earlier on. I'll leave a link for that video also in the description box below. You can also decide to wear perhaps a vest and some tights and some midi tights underneath it. You might also decide to not wear anything for the braver part. Okay then, so let's get cracking already. Go ahead and grab all your grabbables. But before you go, have a look at the subscribe button below and subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Give this video a like if you want to see more of these kind of videos from me. And also let me know if you have a question or two in the comment section below. Okay then, let's get cracking already. My name is Ijoma and welcome to my sewing diary. The materials you will need are your no ease dartless pattern. I'll leave a link for this in the description box below. You'll also need your pen, pencil or marker, a short ruler, awl or office pin, tracer wheel, extra pattern paper, thread in the same color as the tulle fabric and in a contrasting color for basting, needle, pins, buttons. I use a total of 8 buttons, Tailors chalk, a razor blade, measuring tape, masking tape, paper and fabric scissors, as well as your tulle fabric. I used a total of about 3 yards for my garment. I'll also leave a full list in the description box below. Starting with your front pattern, add a 1/2 inch seam allowance at the sides, armhole and neck. At the hem, add a 1 inch seam allowance. You will not need to reinforce the side of the hem in this case. Mark 1 inch down from your bust point on your center dart line and withdraw your top center dart from the 1 inch point like so. Label your pattern and cut off all excess. You'll be cutting your center front on fold. For the back pattern, transfer your shoulder dart to your armhole by drawing a line from the shoulder dart tip to the armhole like so. Cut through your drawn line and then close the shoulder dart, securing with tape. Redraw your shoulder line And then place extra pattern paper underneath the transferred dart at the armhole, securing with masking tape, and redraw your armhole, first with short strokes and then with a continuous line. Add extra pattern paper at the center back. Now, if you've used my method of tracing, you should already have a 1-inch zipper allowance at the center back. So this is going to be part of your button allowance. So you will now need to extend the button allowance further by 1.5 inches to complete the button allowance. Please note that I'm using a 1-inch wide button for this dress, and that's why I'm using this measurement. So mark 1 inch away from the already included button allowance and a further 1/2 inch away from the 1 inch mark. Do this to the length of the center back and connect all points with your ruler like so. Also remember to extend the hem and necklines. Add a 1/2 inch seam allowance at the sides, armhole and neck, and a 1 inch seam allowance at the hem like you did the front. Remove all excess paper and label your pattern. You'll be cutting 2 pieces of your center back. So you've completed the bodice piece. I went ahead and labeled my button allowance and seam allowance at the center back like so. For the bottom skirt, you'll be cutting a rectangle piece of fabric on fold at the top part. Its length should be your desired length plus 1/2 inch, while its width should be 2.5 times your hip measurement plus 5 inches for your total button allowance. That is 2.5 inches button allowance on each side. Because I'm using tulle, I will not be hemming the bottom, so I did not need to include a seam allowance for that. When you're done making the patterns, go ahead and cut out your fabric according to the instructions. Now, since you'll be doubling the tulle, you'll be cutting 4 back pieces, 2 front pieces on fold, and 1 of your skirt piece on fold. Go ahead and mark notch marks at the seam intersections like so. Next, transfer your dart points with needle and contrasting thread. So because we're working with tulle fabric, you might not be able to clearly see marks made with the Tailors chalk if you start with this first. This is one of the patient bits. So thread a needle and insert it into each dart point, cutting off the thread at the top and bottom so that a significant amount is left out. Take off the pins holding the pattern and fabric together and carefully remove the pattern from the fabric, making sure that your threads at the dart points stay put. Next, carefully transfer and pin the dart points to each back piece. I use the contrasting Tailors chalk to leave some form of a mark. You need to make sure that you're marking on the correct side of the pieces, especially since you're working with tulle. So when you're done, place your pattern pieces together and make sure you have left and right pieces. You should have a total of 4 pinned back pieces. Do the same dart transfer to your 2 front pieces. At the end, you will have 2 sets of bodice pieces. When you're done, before sewing the darts, make sure you test the tension of your sewing machine with some scrap tulle fabrics first. So you then sew your darts and tie the ends of the darts like so. After sewing, carefully press your darts towards your center back and center front respectively. I use my iron on very low heat. Again, you need to test what works best for your fabric. You might actually require placing a piece of cotton fabric over your tulle fabric before pressing. Placing right side on right side, go ahead and attach the sides of your front and back pieces with pins. You will be stitching this with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Do this for both pieces. When you're done sewing, press your seam allowance open and trim the side seam allowance to 1/8 of an inch on both pieces. Next, placing right side on right side, pin necklines together. Don't pin the shoulder lines. Pin the armholes starting 2 to 3 inches down from one shoulder point and ending 2 to 3 inches up from the other like so. And then go ahead and stitch with a 1/2 inch seam allowance on all areas that you have pinned. Trim all excess in the areas where you have stitched to 1/4 of an inch. Turn the bodice to the right or front side, and now it's time to join the front and back shoulders together. So to do this, you'll be pinning the inner front to the inner back, starting from the shoulder point to the neck point and back to the shoulder point of the outer front and back fabric. When you're done pinning, there will be a gap in the armhole. So go ahead and stitch the pinned area with a 1/2 inch seam allowance and trim off all excess when you're done, and do this for both sides. You will now need to close the open gap at the armhole. To do this, going in from inside the bodice, on each armhole, connect the shoulder lines of the inner and outer bodice right side to right side like so, and then stitch with a 1/2 inch seam allowance and trim to 1/8 of an inch when you're done, turning and pressing afterwards. Baste your center back and hem to keep the bodice together. Loosely knot at the start and stop of your basting stitch. Now you want your basting stitch loose enough to easily unravel, but solid enough to secure the fabrics together. At the hem, first fold in 1/2 inch, pin and press to create fold lines, then carefully remove the basting stitches when you're done, after which you will fold in by another 1/2 inch, pin and press too. When you're done, you'll be stitching with a 1/8 inch seam allowance at the inner edge, and then go ahead and press to completely finish it. Next, we'll work on the skirt bit. So baste the sides to keep the fabric together, and at the top folded edge, baste at 1/2 inch in from the top edge, and also starting 2.5 inches in from the side edge and to the middle of each side, so that the top edge is basted from the two sides. You want to make sure you leave excess thread at the start and end of the basting done on top. This is to allow you gather the skirt. Now ideally I would have done this with my sewing machine, but because of how delicate the fabric is, I had to baste by hand. So next, go ahead and gather your skirt by pulling on the thread like so. Be careful not to completely pull out the thread at any sides. You'll be stitching your skirt on the front side of your bodice, so locate your center front on the front side of your bodice and indicate with a pin like so. Now, starting from the center back of your bodice, go ahead and pin your skirt piece at the baseline and on the inner edge of your bodice hem like so. Now, you will need to gather the skirt and distribute the gathers throughout the hem. Please note that you will not be gathering the 2.5-inch button allowance on each side. So this is another patient bit. Go ahead and take your time when doing this. You can also use your fingers to gather up bits where needed. When you're done gathering and pinning, carefully stitch right beneath the baste stitch on the right side and from one end to the other. Afterwards, go ahead and carefully remove the baste stitch. To prepare the button allowance for the button and buttonhole, on the inner or back part of the garment, first fold, pin, and press 1/2 inch in from each edge to create a fold line, and then carefully remove the basting stitch. Cut 2 1-inch wide strips in the tulle fabric to stabilize your button allowance and set aside. And then on the inner or back part of the garment again, fold in 1 inch in from the center back edge, pin and press. This will create another fold line, as you can see. Now on its own, it's pretty flimsy as is. So what you will be doing will be inserting the 1-inch wide strips like so into the folded center back, pin and further press down. You will then be stitching with a 1/8 inch seam allowance on the inner edge of the folded button allowance on both sides. When you're done, go ahead and pin the center backs together on the inner or back side and mark your buttonholes. I started 1/2 inch down from the top edge and gave a 2-inch space in between each button, but also made sure that I marked the button placement at the hip where the bodice connects to the skirt. I used only 8 buttons and do not want the button to get to the end. When you're done with one side, transfer the marks to the other side of the center back and then sew on your button on the corresponding right or front side of these marks. I placed my button on the right hand side of the garment. Left hand side, make your buttonholes. It can be horizontal or vertical, but it should be the same size as your button. I'll leave a link for how to sew buttonholes with your domestic sewing machine in the description box below. When you're done with the buttonholes, go ahead and use a razor blade to open the holes. Now, I will not advise using a seam ripper for this because of how delicate the fabric is. You want to be able to control the opening. Next, seal off the bottom of your dress according to the pins in this clip. So you'll be pinning the edge of the right center back to the left hand side and with another pin horizontally underneath the last button. So go ahead and stitch with a 1/8 inch seam allowance at the edge and according to the pin marks here. And you're done! This dress is super cute and I hope the process has been easy to follow. Let me know if you have any questions and how you found the process in the comment section below. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out. Until next time, see you later. Bye!